Greetings, good people. Welcome back to the podcast series, Writing What I Like, Fieldnotes of a Black Woman Scholar. I am Dr. Venus Evans Winters, also known as Dr. V. Before I get started today, do not forget to, first of all, review other episodes in this series because it lays out the foundation of exactly what I'm trying to achieve here, which is basically sharing my world as a Black woman intellectual activist. So go ahead and review other podcast episodes, but also subscribe. Okay, so subscribe as well so that you can consistently receive these episodes. So anyhow, in today's episode, or field note as we call it here, I discussed the courage to write. Now, as a college professor, of course, I always expect students, especially graduate students, to walk into my classroom ready to write. I see writing as an expectation of graduate studies, even if it takes weeks or sometimes months for students to even begin to think about what it is they want to write about. However, I am never surprised when people are afraid to write. Afraid to write. So people always ask me all the time, you aren't afraid to write that? Or you are not afraid of what people are going to think about what you wrote? This is another one. Dang, you right. But everybody can't say what you say, Dr. V. So I've heard it all in different ways. So it's interesting to me that we are in a culture, and we have to admit it, we are in a culture where people are afraid to write, or they're afraid to tell their truth. They're afraid to inscribe their opinions or perspectives. Now, people are, for obvious reasons, they're afraid for real serious, implications or consequences. They fear losing their job. People fear offending their friends or embarrassing their family members. Or even, like in the case of students, some students are afraid of pissing off their professors, or they're afraid of smearing their own reputations or their friends' reputations or their family's reputations. And in some cases, people fear losing their lives. And I've spoken my truth in books, academic articles, and social media, like places like Twitter or on Facebook. I've also been threatened or harassed for my views, for real. And that's sometimes that harassment or that, smearing of reputation, that takes place even on college campuses. Of course, it's happened in social media where I'm harassed or threatened for something that I wrote. So anyway, that's the risk, in my opinion. Truth telling is the risk that real writers take. Good, authentic, creative writers and intellectuals do take risk when we write. Unfortunately, some of our cultural writers, some of our culture's best writers. I don't know if that sounds right. Let me restate that. Some of our culture's best writers will never win a popularity contest. Yet, some of our most well-known cultural writers, like I'm thinking of people like Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, Gwendolyn Brooks, James Baldwin. Who are some other famous cultural writers? Alice Walker, Zora Neale Hurston, Amiri Baraka, Octavia Butler, Ralph Ellison, Alex Haley, Malcolm X, Richard Wright. All of these cultural workers have actually took the risk to tell the truth in writing. Because once something is in writing, this isn't a pencil. We're talking about typing something on paper and disseminating it. Once it's in writing forever, right? So there's risk that comes with that. But the good thing, and something we should always remember, is that some of our best cultural writers or cultural workers got the word out in writing. But what I've observed over the years is that fear actually blocks one's ability to write authentically. Fear blocks one's ability to write authentically. For example, once in undergrad school, I volunteered at a women's shelter, a shelter for women who were running away from or fleeing their abusive partners. My job at the shelter was to teach the women relaxation and stress relief techniques, similar to the work that I do now in my therapy practice and with my meditation clients. And as a part of my class back then with the women who were survivors of abuse, I would, along with deep breathing exercises and exercises to reconnect with the body, I would also teach these women how to journal. Now, oddly enough, the women they loved coming to my class and doing basic body exercises like stretching and other movements, but they visibly refused and articulated their refusal to participate in journaling. And they will shut down when it came to writing down their emotions and reflections, their emotions and their personal reflections on paper. When I asked them, when I inquired why won't you participate in the journaling activity, they responded that they feared. Imagine this. They feared that someone would find their journal writings. They explained to me how they could be beat up or killed if their abusers found their words in their journals. Now, in their minds, they actually associated their written words with the risk of harm. And let's keep it real, right? So in the United States, especially those people who are descendants of enslaved people, if we even got caught reading, or even if the enslavers knew that we could write, we could have been killed. We could have been whipped, beat up, hanged, right? Or maimed or whatever, sold away. So this fear could be internal to some people's DNA. Right. So, we keep it real up in this Fieldnote in our podcast. But anyway, so every time I get too fearful to write my truth, I think about those women who experienced a hell of a lot more than pain. They've experienced a hell of a lot more pain than me, and they escaped that pain. Right. So it stops me from being fearful to write my truth when I think about all the shit that they survived and the stuff that they went through. So that's how I push past my fear. So when people ask me, Dr. V, why are you not afraid to write that? Or Dr. V, you're not afraid of what people are going to think? When I do become fearful, I think of those women. I think about the courage they had to leave their abusive partners, but I also think about the justifiable fear they had to write their truths, even in a journal. So that's how I push past it, because I would never have to experience that just from my writing, and I pray that I don't have to. I'm not going to say never. I haven't had to. So I close with the following thoughts and questions. 1, what do you fear? So I want you to write this down, hopefully not while you're driving, but if you can write this down. 1, what do you fear about telling your truth in writing? What do you fear about writing your truth? Question number 2 for you to write about or to think about: how can you use writing to overcome fear or a real or perceived threat? Let me rephrase that. How can you use writing to overcome fear? And the second part of that question: how can you use writing to overcome a real or perceived threat? Okay. So how might your writing, this is the third question. How might your writing help someone else overcome their fear? So how might your writing overcome their fear? So for example, I asked that question because, recently here in the United States, we've seen a lot of young people killed at the hands of white police officers or police officers and white vigilantes, right? And so I've written about it. I've talked about it certainly, but I've written about it as well. So that's inscribed in history, my feelings and my thoughts, and it has been circulated publicly. And so, yes, do I get fearful? Yes, I'm afraid I'm going to piss some people off, people who are far and near. But at the same time, it's because I need to protect our young people, or I want to help protect our young people and to bring awareness that I push through that fear and I write my truth, right? So that's how I can, by overcoming my fear, hopefully I can help someone else. And so that's why I think it's important to reflect on what is that fear of writing about? Is that what's blocking people from writing and writing their truth? Now today, I coach many graduate students about writing or how to write, the processes of writing. I also coach new faculty and other writers on how to find their voice. But I never dismiss the fact that it might be fear that's blocking their creativity and their dreams of becoming a very good writer or speaker or even a famous writer or speaker. So I know that fear, it might be fear that's blocking their creativity and fear that's blocking their dreams of becoming a famous writer or speaker or a business leader or political pundit or whatever they aspire to be. I also teach many people in my therapy practice and coaching practice to use writing or journaling specifically to identify their pain points, thus their deepest hurts, their need of healing can actually come about through the writing process. Yes, writing and seeing your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas on paper actually is a part of the healing process. Now, I'm not making this up. This is just science. This is science. Your brain actually needs to see your feelings and your ideas on paper in order to heal or for those ideas and plans to become truth. So that's just like role modeling, right? So sometimes it's very difficult for people to become a doctor or an engineer or even an actor if they don't see someone who looks like them or if they never see someone doing it. So it's very hard for somebody to become, for example, a basketball player if they've never seen anybody play basketball. That's common sense. So that's the same thing with writing. You have to write and you have to see yourself, they're not talking about yourself, I'm talking about your inner self on paper to make whatever it is that's deeply buried to come out and to come into fruition. And so anyway, I got a little sidetracked with that soapbox. Now, of course, writing to heal or to help someone else heal, it first requires acknowledging our own fears and then summing up the courage to tell our truth. See, writing is not the fear that stagnates us. It's not the fear itself. It's actually some of us are just afraid to tell our truth. But telling our truth is half the battle. Truth tellers, I'm going to tell y'all this. This is my nugget for the day. Truth tellers are the most awesome writers. Truth tellers are the most awesome writers. So identify your truth and commit to putting your truth from pen to paper, or in this case, from your mind to the paper. And that, again, takes courage. So anyway, I feel like now I'm just going off in many directions, but I want to start there. So overcome the fear in order to tell your truth. And I am going to stop at this point. We have come to the close of this particular Fieldnote. And for more musings on fearless writing and the courage to write, go ahead and check me out on Twitter at Dr. V. Evans Winters, or also on Facebook at Dr. Venus Evans Winters. and at VenusEvansWinters.com just to see all of my musings in one place. Well, thank you for listening to this particular field note. I know that it was a lot going on, but the most important thing to remember from this field note is to overcome your fear in order to become a fearless writer.